So another Chinese EV company here in China has adopted battery swap, and it is not one of the alliance partners with NIO. And this company, well, unfortunately, they are dying actually. So we're going to talk about that. And also we're going to talk about, is battery swap really a moat? Because it seems like anybody can do it. Is it a moat? All right. Well, of course, we got to talk about that as well. Here, you're seeing that battery swap in its flesh, what's happening. All right. This is, of course, a Neta battery swap station. They have actually adopted battery swap as well. They can swap in 3 minutes, and this is, of course, what it looks like. Now, Neta as a company, and it seems like they've adopted this in a sort of like a last-ditch effort to save the company in a sense, because right now here in China, Neta isn't doing that well. Back in 2022, they were doing very well. They sold 150,000 vehicles for the year. In 2023, sales declined year over year, down to 120,000 vehicles. And then in just this last month, all right, it was reported that they were doing 70% job cuts, and it was confirmed. And also they had trouble paying out the salaries for their workforce, which was absolutely crazy. And their monthly deliveries for October last month was only about 6,000 vehicles. And remember, these cars are really cheap. They're really affordable. So it's more like their brand has fallen off, okay? People aren't buying their cars anymore. People just aren't buying their cars, even though they're affordable. There's tons of other affordable cars. Why would someone buy your car, right? So it really highlights the brutality of the Chinese EV market. We're still in a very big price war. Let's not forget about that. That's why NIO had a lot of incentives, pushing a lot of sales. Recently, they've cut back incentives. Sales have fallen, but margins have gone up. And of course, Envo is the cheaper vehicle that if you want to pay less and go for battery swap, you get that vehicle. But how does this all fit in with their battery swap? I mean, this is very interesting to see, right? And it looks very rudimentary, right? It just seems like it's doing, you drive it in and then it pops the battery out, pops a new one in, done, finished. It doesn't seem like it has any sort of checks. And the battery swap mechanism, it just seems like it's just being bolted on. Now, of course, here in China, there's also other battery swap operators like Alton for the BAIC taxis. So a lot of taxis here in China, well, basically all the taxis here in China, in Beijing in particular, can do battery swap. And they can, they use the EU7 vehicle from BAIC, Beijing automotive company, and that can do battery swap. And I've actually checked one of their battery swap stations out. Very rudimentary, not high tech compared to NIO. And of course, well, back to Neta. They're trying to IPO, but it doesn't seem like it's getting through. They might successfully IPO, and it seems like that company is really going downhill. And the thing with battery swap right now, and remember, Rising Auto, Feifan is also doing battery swap. They also have their battery swap stations, but their sales have also collapsed. And what's very apparent is that battery swap does not work unless you have a ton of stations. If you only have one station in the middle of the city or somewhere, and you have to drive 20 minutes to get there, and then swap, and then drive another 20 minutes back, why would you even bother going there, right? Why not just charge? There's so many more nearby chargers. So this is partially one of the reasons why we're seeing Rising Auto's battery swap completely fail. Nobody uses them, right? Because there aren't enough. And then like, nobody's gonna drive so long just to swap. And because nobody's using them, it's not really, they don't really need to build anymore. They feel like, hey, it's a waste of investment if they build more. So what you're seeing is scale is really, really important when it comes to battery swap. Right? You have to have like a ton of stations. And, it's a little bit worrying, that anybody can start battery swap. Anybody can do it, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you want to get to the scale where NIO is at right now, right, that's going to cost you a ton of money, Right? NIO has already poured a ton of money, spent so much money on the infrastructure. They're number one in terms of infrastructure. Charging, they got more chargers than Tesla. And, well, if you add swap stations, they got many, many more. All right, just on chargers, they're already more than Tesla here in China. So, it takes a lot of money to get to scale. And then, of course, NIO with the battery swap franchising, right? Other people can put in their money to build a swap station. And it's just going to get more and more bigger. It's just going to get bigger, right? And in that sense, it's really like a moat, right? If you think about charging in the US, right? Supercharging, Tesla superchargers. Is that really any different from like traditional chargers? Not really that much different, right? But of course they got the scale. The scale is their moat. They got so many chargers out there in some of the best spots that, for other guys, they kind of have to join in, right? Ford and all those guys, they have to join in and use Tesla's superchargers. Similar here. Like, you can do it yourself, sure, but you're nowhere. Like, it's impossible for you to get to the scale of NIO's battery swap network, right? And those guys, they're never going to place a swap station on the highway like what NIO has done, right? Because they simply don't have enough owners, car owners, and also there's not enough demand for them to even like justify putting a swap station on the highway. So you're never going to get that convenience factor on the highways for road trips, that kind of stuff. So in that essence, when it comes to scale, NIO's battery swap is absolutely a fantastic moat, right? But yes, people can do it. Other people can do it, but it requires so much investment that it's basically discouraged. It's cheaper for them to join in on NIO's battery swap alliance, than for them to build their own swap stations, right? Or they can just stick to charging. So, when I see this kind of stuff, I'm not worried about it at all right? And also, Rising Auto's battery swap. There was a lot of fuss about how that was a better swap experience than NIO because you had the AC on and everything on, the music was on, whereas for NIO's, when you go for a battery swap, everything had to be turned off. And people were complaining, hey, that had a better battery swap experience, but how many swap stations does that have? You might only have a couple in big cities. In those smaller cities, there's no chance for you to even have one of those. So you're pretty much charging most of the time with those cars. But with this, it seems like that is also for taxis, because taxis seem to have a higher swap volume, similar for the Alton swap stations for taxis here in Beijing. The Neta swap station seems also to be exclusive for taxis. And I'm pretty sure if you're a Neta U owner, you might possibly be also able to go for a swap. But you're not going to find that many swap stations around the city. Yeah, that's just the case. And I think this is also a moat, but also an Achilles heel for NIO, because that also means that if you want to bring battery swap to another country, if you want to expand to another country, you have to bring swap stations, and this is going to require a lot of capital investment for your moat to be fully expressed, right? So it does take a lot of money, and it does take a lot of time. So say they want to expand into the US, imagine how many swap stations they would have to build in the US. They have to build 2,000, 3,000 swap stations in the US. That's going to cost them a ton of money, right? That's going to cost them like billions and billions of dollars. So in that sense, it is absolutely a moat, but I'd say it can't be beat. All right, NIO's battery swap moat cannot be beat right now. The only way is to join it. And for future expansions, I'm sure they're going to figure out a way, like swap franchising, maybe find some investment fund in the US that is willing to put up the money for a stable return, and they could fund those swap stations, like what's happening here in China. So very, very interesting, very interesting. But it does show one important thing, and that is the fact that battery swap is indeed a correct thing to have, all right? Not just charging, but also battery swap. So that's good, that's good. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.